Yeah.
You guys can still talk. It's fine. We got time.
See, it's not showing the difficulties. So nothing got recorded that day. Yeah, the whole thing. It started from the beginning.
See? Yeah. She's.
That was really noisy, the weird voices that are coming out.
She says it's working, but
Still having trouble again.
she said today it was working just fine. I clicked on start, look what it does. Downloading the meeting now.
She says, click on join meeting.
That's what I did. It says it's recording.
Does it?
Yeah.
Says it.
But it also says download the meeting now app and a complete setup.
You're like, I'm not.
It might be open in the browser. It might be trying to download
So it says it's recording still. It's just not gonna have video.
Maybe it's trying to log on to the Zoom, see if it's working.
Go ahead.
Hit invite.
She's gonna see if it's working. She's on.
Okay. She's gonna see if this works. Michelle said she'd do it.
A few minutes late. She was coming from her job. 30 minutes out. That was about 25 minutes ago.
Oh, we can wait. I have no problem waiting.
No, we're not.
I'm not in charge. Don't give me.
I know. I wasn't asking. You.
Well,
I just made a comment.
I won't say that. I said we'll take a vote as a group. and decide. Let's go ahead and do that now.
It doesn't matter.
She's saying she's gonna be about 15 minutes behind.
15 minutes, it's more than 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes.
I thought you said that she was out and she left 25 minutes ago.
You can hear it, but there, I didn't
Oh, now
see
it says
anything. It's got some kind of blue screen, but you can hear the audio.
It's fine. She said something.
She said she'd be here. That's,
You guys?
It's 15 minutes, is more than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
yes. it
All
is.
right, so it's 7 o'clock. We're gonna call this meeting to order. We're gonna go ahead and do the pledge this. honor. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call, we're going to do Mr. Shaboo,
Here?
Mr. Morris. Here. Myself, and Mrs. Moore is going to be late. She was on her way. She got stuck at work. The purpose of tonight's meeting, we're going to go over the moratorium. Not the actual moratorium itself. What we're going to go over is what needs to be done if this moratorium passes council's duties. According to this, Mr. Morris is going to go over a little bit where they adopted this from, because I was not at that meeting itself. If you read it, there's things that council must do if this moratorium passes. And then there's a lot of work to be done even after. So that's the, I don't know if anybody's actually, done, obviously you've all done the research, a lot of these cities are putting moratoriums on them, and then after the year, they let it go. They don't do anything about it. So the purpose of it is to actually have something done while the moratorium is in place. So that's what we're here to discuss, is what we would do, how to do it. It's not the actual moratorium itself, it's just what this one would say, how and what to do, so. If you want to go ahead and give us a little brief on where you guys came up with this, we'll start with that.
And this is more for the benefit of the council people that are here that weren't at the ordinance committee where we discussed this. This moratorium is based off the North Royalton moratorium for Dollar Generals, in which they call it a small box discount store, because you can't call them Dollar Generals, you get sued for that. And quite quite honestly, I proposed to the ordinance committee when I brought this up again to them, that after talking to Jim Lyons, he said we could go ahead and pass this legislation. And it may or may not stop the current proposal going in where St. Andrew's Church is. However, it would give the city a stance to say, wait a minute, the community doesn't really want another dollar store. Are you sure you want to put this in there? And I explained that to the ordinance committee. And I thought we were all on the same page, that we agreed we would do that. It would also, if that other development company came forward and said, well, wait a minute, you've got a moratorium now, what about us? We would have to tell them, yeah, you can go ahead, but keep in mind, the community doesn't want you. So at least a lot of the community does, not everybody. I'm sure there's people out there that want this Dollar General. Unfortunately, I could not say that in front of council meeting the other night, because it's like, as I told somebody else, if you play poker, which I'm not a poker player, but you certainly don't show your hand to the other players. So if I did that, that comes out in the minutes, that's exactly what we're gonna let them do. So that's what happened. We all agreed that the Dollar General is not a healthy thing to see in our city. At least everybody did that night. There is a fear of a lawsuit. I personally, especially after the conversation with Jim Lyons, I don't think that developer would immediately sue us. I really think they would come to us first and say, wait a minute, what about us? Okay, so I couldn't get that to all of council. That's what was the idea of this. So that's what this is. And those of you who have seen this document know that this is based on the North Royalton. They just passed theirs for another year. So that brings you up to speed.
Okay. So like you said, this was taken from North Royalton. The problem I see with that is, like you said, they just did another year on it. So during that first year, what did they do to work on the moratorium? That's the problem that I see we need to do. And that's what I think Mr. Johnson wants us to figure out, how we would go forward, because we put a moratorium on with wanting to stop it. So that's what we're here for tonight's meeting, just to figure that out.
Can I say something? The application, all the process, Dollar General has submitted, whether I like it or you don't like it, we all don't want it,
When was it submitted to?
last week,
Last week.
Friday. That's my information.
Yeah, gee, surprised. You want to see my?
I heard
surprise?
that today.
May I ask who you heard that from?
Our city administrator.
The city administrator or the mayor?
No, I didn't hear that from the mayor. But what I'm saying is,
Okay, well, that.
we're not gonna
that's
be
the side
able
effect.
to,
We're gonna work on what,
okay,
I mean, we can't even pass, it has to still be passed by council, but we can work on what we will
Sure,
do
I
once
agree.
this is passed. That's what this means. I can't. you know.
Well, with them submitting the application, and now they now have a legal argument. So at this point, they are in play. We had that window closed, but what we can do now is they want to do more with that property than just a Dollar General.
absolutely.
So I think it's very, very important that we really hone in on the PUD and really figure out how we work around this issue that we're stuck with.
We're
Well, we
getting-
can work on that, but like I said, this.
I can answer
That's gonna
that
go with the
question, but
PUD.
that's all.
Do you have anything else you want to add before I go through this? Real quick, I'll stop. Nothing. So the first part of these sections, it looks like there's definitions and descriptions of what the dollar store, or not dollar store, we're gonna say small box store consists of. So I don't think there's anything we have to do or work on with that, unless anybody's saw any changes.
No, I think
we
that's-
want to look at. One thing I would ask that we look at is, there was a city that, Cleveland actually, that ended up putting a restriction on how far apart. No study was needed for that. They just put the restriction on.
How far apart you talking about?
They did 2 miles. It's just a thought. I don't know, So what we need to talk about is council wishes to study current planning and zoning ordinances and business regulations. Any thoughts on what we want to do for that portion? Looking at our current business portion, this falls within it. Any thoughts on changes?
Not sure what you're proposing.
Well, we'd have to change something because they're gonna currently, under planning and zoning, there's nothing that would stop them from wanting to do this, like,
There's nothing to stop until we do, unless we do this moratorium in the future.
Quite honestly, I think this moratorium is kind of a dead issue at this point, other than send a message to the current developer.
And I
You can
agree
go
with
ahead
that.
legally and do
I
this,
think we
however,
should too.
the community doesn't want you.
well, if we do.
Well, we
do
should-
it,
we
though,
should have
what
done
if
that at
there's-
the last
What if
meeting.
there's another one that wants to go up?
What if there is?
You know, at least we're working on towards, you know,
I agree with that.
I can't tell you whether or not this is gonna happen down there. I don't know.
What if there is another one?
I don't know.
Would it make sense to do a limit on how many can be within an area? I mean, our town's only 1.6 square miles, so you're saying that they can't be within 2 miles of each other in North Royalton. Is that the same store or any small box store or?
So the 2 mile was actually Cleveland's.
Oh, Cleveland?
North Royalton, yes, no.
They just passed the moratorium for the second time, so it's just
Oh, okay. I
preventing
thought
it.
within that they have.
No, no,
This is
their
like-
moratorium was any further,
This is their third or fourth time.
so third or fourth, they've continued on that.
Yes.
Would have to grandfather who's already here because there are already 2.
Now, there was a city that, when I did some research, that they put a moratorium in, but the application was already in their grandfather. They brought you.
But I meant the 2 that are already across,
Oh, ours?
the Family Dollar.
Yes, we
Dollar
can't
Tree,
get,
right.
I don't
They're
legally
way within
see
less
how
than-
we could get rid of them. No, I don't. That would be up to Mr. Lyons, but like, what we're looking at is future. I mean, we can't.
I would say if nothing else, yes, we should put a limit on how many of these are in the city, even if it's just one.
That's, so if we're
From
gonna pass
from this
this,
date on.
we need to determine a plan of how we're going to go forward on. It's gonna be, in the end, it's gonna be creating legislation to prevent it. Is what this is.
Yes,
So we're moratorium stop for temporary, and then we need to come up with a plan for permanent.
let me ask you, folks, is there any reason why we can't just put moratorium on it? We do it year after year after year.
Is
It's
there-
having it pop up to do this.
Why not just put some sort of legislation? in place?
We could, but we've also could have done that Tuesday night. Just so you're aware, Cleveland Heights voters, back on May 3rd, voted to reject dollar store. Their council wouldn't move. So they actually put it, the residents put it on a referendum, and they voted for it. And I can send you the article concerning that. if you'd like. What's that?
I wouldn't have any problem. putting
Well-
it on a referendum.
Other than it costs money.
Yes,
But the city officials have said that even if the initiative gains approval from the voters, which it did, the results could still be challenged and set aside as unconstitutional due to the existing contract signed in December by their realtor.
So it was a previous.
Yes.
Okay.
So they were acting on something like we are acting on. And I'd be glad to share that with everybody. Sure.
What happened with that?
So far, I don't know. I haven't heard anything else.
They lost the vote 25 to 75%.
They lost it?
Yes, the referendum. in favor. Yeah, they were-
Okay, so back to the matter at hand. If we pass this moratorium right now, it's saying the city council is going to study planning and zoning ordinances, build or business regulations and sign ordinances in our city. Which is gonna form a group that, which is, I guess, what this is for.
Okay.
Right, Mr. Johnson? So we're gonna look at our planning and zoning ordinances and figure out how we can add small boxes in there and what kind of regulations we can put on them,
I
whether
would,
it be number, location.
they're going into, was it business one? or
They have to be business one or business.
Business
fall under
one or business two. Now, can we go into those and change the wording in there that we're not, that,
So business districts, 1250. You're saying adding a definition into.
Yeah, something like that. That's just a suggestion. Permitted buildings and uses, 125802. Retail is completely closed buildings, personal services, restaurants, dance floors, hotels.
We can add a section in there.
Under retailing in completely enclosed buildings with the exception of small box stores as defined here,
Well, it would go under definitions as well, small box stores.
correct?
But what kind of restriction do we want to propose?
It's 5803.
Do you want to go by number? Do you want to go by vicinity? What do you recommend? My recommendation?
So, got a question.
Max of 3.
Sorry.
We've been sitting here for a month. Telling 7 of you people, we don't want it.
Mhm.
5 of the 7 ignored it completely. They voted it down. So what are we doing sitting here now? You guys already know, he said it, it's approved for them to build. So what are we doing? We're spinning our wheels for nothing now?
What we're doing is going over, if this moratorium passes, what we're going to do as council, because we have to enact under the rules of this.
What difference does it make? He said it's already approved.
It isn't, I didn't say that.
What
You said it's
The
already
application.
approved to be built.
the application is.
The application, I didn't say it was approved to be built. That's still gotta come June 6th, in front of planning and zoning, and we're gonna try to do as much as we can.
That's all we have left.
That's all we have
Turn
left.
around and do anything with this moratorium is farting in the wind. Because the reality of it is, there's already 1, 2, 3 commercial big stores all in the area, small boxes. There's a couple of little small boxes. There's probably 5 or 6 total. It doesn't matter at this point. It's too late. We lost that battle. So now we gotta say, okay, we're stuck with this.
Mhm.
What do we do? The only leverage we have as a community right now is the way the zoning is written. Can we reason with the developer? Because they want more than a box store. They want to use that land. That's our only leverage. If we don't work with them hand in hand to do something everybody can live with,
I agree with you.
we're toast. Because they could be a hard nose now. They already won and they got plenty of money. And they got Terry Coyne as their lawyer and they're set.
Right.
So all they need to do now is say, forget you, we're building it according to the zoning. And if you, with Terry Coyne being an attorney, I'd put Coyne against Lyons any day.
Oh,
Coyne will turn around and kick his butt and say, here's the deal. I follow the zoning to a T. I'm gonna put my ugly box store in. There's not a thing you can do. Now-
But is that the only place you don't want a dollar store? Because state zoning doesn't permit them to build there.
But
The moratorium would
but
prevent
Terry
other
Coyne's
dollar
Terry
stores.
Coyne's gonna follow that to a T.
Sure.
So
Oh,
he's
yeah.
gonna get his dollar store. So what you can do though, is now we gotta switch gears. We can't attack them anymore. The only thing we can
Sure,
do
but
is is work with them.
This is for the purpose of
Yeah,
future.
I differ a little bit. I think that, I mean, it probably will go through.
Yeah.
Maybe planning and zoning will do something, whatever, but things can go wrong, things can change, all kinds of things can happen. I would still like to do it and see a limit on I would like to limit, say no more than one store within our 1.6 city limits.
We can't do one store,
We
Can't
already
do,
have two.
right?
We
We
already
can't,
have
but
two.
we're gonna
you
have.
can't go less than we already have. That's not possible.
Okay, so no more than two. One of those is gonna go out- likely to go out of business if this. store
If there's gonna be,
doesn't open.
I mean, we can put, my personal suggestion is to do within a radius.
Yes.
Because here's the deal. You can put numbers, but if this one goes through, now you're up to 3 already. Now you put 2, that's
Well, so, but
But
how
it's
do you do
grandfathered.
a radius if these two are right next to each other?
grandfather means they're already there. We
So
can't
why can't we limit it to one?
limit it to one.
One store. You're saying we can't limit, the moratorium can't limit it to one because there's already two. Well, they'd be grandfathered for being 2 versus 1, just like they'd be. the
So you're
radius
saying and
would
not
be X.
allowing them to, but which one do you decide? I mean, that's.
I understand what you're
Well, so
saying.
I
if
get
they're
it.
go out of business and they're gone, they can't.
One
they can't
is
put it out.
one's likely to go out of business with this other one if it goes
And then we
through.
have two.
And so.
That,
I mean, that's-
would prevent a new one.
why can't we come back and then, we always redo these ordinances. We can change that. to-
Is there a problem? with
Anytime.
redundancy of putting in
These
a
are
number
not,
and a
these are
radius?
living documents, excuse me.
Number and a radius. If you're gonna go with number, you can just, I mean,
Why not within the city limits?
Most of the ones
Yeah,
that I've
city-
read,
City
they're
limits.
radius. And they're a straight line radius. They're not driving around. Most of them are either a half a mile to a mile apart, depending on the city, size of the city. So pick a mile. Pick a mile. That way there's nothing else coming in here, because what did you
well, if
say?
we do 2 square,
One
it's
six.
not gonna.
1.6.
What is it, a mile and a half square anyway? Why can't we just say within the city limits?
All right,
But that's
Yeah, hold on a second.
That's matter. but-
hang on. So
Yeah.
And what did matter?
real quick, Mr. Morris went over where we got this from. We're going over now council's responsibility in this moratorium. So we're kind of like
Which was the survey thing.
study, survey, looking at ordinances and stuff like that.
Why not?
We were just talking about
Quantity and rate.
possibly putting number limits, there's mile radius limits of small box stores into an ordinance versus, once this moratorium passes, it's just a temporary stop. A lot of cities have temporary stop and kept going and going and renewing. So that's what, Mr. Clinton.
Apologize for coming in a few minutes late, but I understand what's transpired. The council's failure to take action at the last meeting resulted exactly as we expected. Somebody called the developer and said, hey, you better act now, and they did. So that's a done deal. And looking at the current zoning, there is no recourse for us. I mean, you can say we don't like you, whatever, but in fact, the zoning allows that store to go in. Maybe a miracle will happen, probably not. So let's assume they're gonna build the store. There are 2 other things, and they look so simple. One is, you go ahead and pass the moratorium as written, moving forward. This one's coming in, you don't need to put a number on it. The number is 0. No more small box stores. We're gonna get stuck with a 1. This is what the other cities have done. Do it for a year, do it for 2 years, do it for a year in renewal. There is no legal reason not to do that now, because you're not going to restrict the deal in progress.
Correct.
So that's one thing. The second thing is, right now, whoever buys the church property or Lake Trades or whatever is not allowed to build rental properties. This is pretty simple. We don't have to change anything. We just have to leave that piece the way it is. Be it the church property, the dollar store, that already they are not allowed. So if you want to move forward with a PUD, you don't have to change anything about rental properties. You just don't have to do a favor to the developers. And that's exactly what it would be. We would be doing them and say, hey, what, you know what? We're gonna change the zoning so you can put in rentals. Why would we do that?
So I want to stop you right.
Okay.
Just real quick, the purpose of this meeting, you did miss it,
I understand.
is to go over this moratorium as presented
I
to council. And it's the things we would need to do if this passes.
I
Okay.
understand that.
So the PUD, the other things, I can't control that right at this moment. This is,
That one thing.
We need
think
to
about,
focus on-
B1 zoning, they are allowed to have rentals as part of their commercial zone, just so you know.
that is correct.
Oh, the rentals can only be
On
those
top.
old folks'
Yes,
homes
they
that
are
are.
permitted.
On top.
It's in zoning.
On top of the business, they are allowed. I looked it up today in the code. Rentals, it says rentals right
They
there.
they could put senior housing in there.
They
What's
absolutely
that?
can do it.
Okay.
Above, and I don't think it said, it wasn't a limit at one. It was,
No, it's not limited. to-
it's not limited.
The idea that, just to bring you up to speed, if I might cut in here, Kevin, is we, at one point, we're looking at what Willoughby had done on Erie Street, where they have their shops underneath and condos up above. We thought it'd be nice to try to entice that kind of thing. But we also found out later, Willoughby had a heck of a time getting those condos built, that they realized who wants to live above a business, really? So,
But it is specified as rentals.
yes.
Okay,
So what's the problem? We're just passing the moratorium. It doesn't affect the current project with Dollar Store. But you don't need to put a number on it. We're not having any more. Simple.
I can't answer that.
Oh, I
Well,
can.
yeah.
There's two problems in here. Number one, who's gonna do the study? And
That's what
how
this-
are we going to set up
So you
for the
guys have in
12-month
here-
rule?
So we're gonna talk about that. There's gotta be a study of the impacts of these types of stores relative to traffic, change in traffic pattern. So these are all things we are responsible for, according to this ordinance as written.
Okay, so we changed moratorium. That the proposed dollar store.
I agree.
Big box store has to do that traffic study.
Proposed developer.
Yeah.
Propose.
Okay, so you guys would like to strike council and put that they are responsible to.
Correct.
who are you-
Whereas
The
the
proposed
developer wishes to
developer.
have the developer study the impact of these types of stores relative to the increase in traffic, change in traffic patterns, and the need for an extra turning lane. They do the study,
That's absolutely.
or they pay to have the study done. I always want.
You gotta have it done by an independent.
Yeah.
That way.
So here's my thought on this, okay? The main objective is to eliminate them altogether from coming. Why are we gonna sit here and do studies on things we don't want here? Just put a restriction on it and be done.
Why are we
That's
doing
what
a moratorium instead of a ban?
Why don't we do a ban
Yeah.
versus a moratorium?
Well, do
I
that.
like
Yeah,
that
after
better
we
too.
allowed the Dollar General to go in.
Get rid of the
Yeah.
moratorium.
After the last council meeting, we let this Dollar General in.
So then we can go back to 1258 and put in there no small box stores, this definition. And that would ban them completely.
Future.
Sounds like a good idea, Dave.
Put it right in the ordinance and then boom, they're done.
What would be put in the ordinance then? 1258?
Somehow we have to write in here that,
That would be under 1258.02, I would think.
right, under
Permitted
1250,
buildings and uses.
yeah.
And that's under business one and two, correct?
Retail
Yeah,
in
it's
completely
both.
enclosed buildings, except for small discount
It says
stores,
all buildings and
variety.
uses are permitted or not permitted or allowed. Conditional use.
So we
Somehow
wanna
we
put
need to write
somewhere
that
in
in.
125802, we're just gonna
And then that would be it. We wouldn't even have a moratorium.
restrict.
Under retail services.
Mhm.
Anymore. Okay, and then we'll talk to Mr. Lyons, because he's gonna have to do the legal terms for that
do that last week
under.
before you voted?
Yeah, so I checked in with the administration last week. From what I was told is that the developer filed their application shortly after their presentation, long before a moratorium was even talked about.
I thought I heard her say
That's not-
Friday.
That's not what we did.
It
He
was
said
done
it was
on
done after
Friday.
the council.
It was done after the last council meeting.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I
Friday.
understood.
Just
Friday.
like
Just
I
like
was
we
under the
predicted.
impression-
Unbeknownst
I'll
to
double check
us.
them. But
We'll
also-
never move now.
But also I was told that the developer already said that if we passed the moratorium, they were willing to take us to court. Who said that?
I'll
The
believe that.
administration.
It's so-
That's-
It's absolutely correct. I think she's right over here. Terry Coyne would do it in a heartbeat.
He would do it only if he has a case.
Correct,
There are
correct.
many lawyers, when you have no argument, he would lose.
That they would.
I'm not afraid of the legal lawsuit. I just want to know what is the outcome gonna be. If we're gonna lose, we
See,
can't.
what he did was insure it up his turf. That was the
Right,
case.
right.
He didn't have a case before Friday. It was speculation. What they would do is you have to prove damages. So before Friday, what would have happened was, they would have said, how much you got invested in this? The most he could sue for is those, how much is invested. If it's $5,000-10,000, it's that's it.
Okay.
That's all he could get. He wasn't gonna fight. He'd spend more. His Coin charges him $500 an hour. He would never be able to do it. So the reality of it is, we had an argument beforehand. Now it's too late. Now he's shored up his defenses. He can go forward with securing the land, which is what he's gonna do now. Hurry up and buy up that land as quick as he
And
can.
it will be done, I would say, in the next week.
How can we find out for sure what date it was actually?
I have no control over it.
Because he said one thing.
I'll double check
So
with
it's
them.
kind of-
Because I-
Yeah, double check.
I talked to
Okay,
him,
hold on.
I called the morning after the council meeting
And she
had that
said,
question.
okay.
And I was told that an application had already been filed.
So any of this, it
And that
doesn't
was
pertain
talking to
to,
them the morning after the council, and I called
Well,
at
we-
7 AM in the morning,
Okay,
yes.
then I may misunderstood her, but the application has been filed.
Mr. Shea.
Who gets that application? and who
The
would
city,
know? We
the
don't seem
city
to know
manager.
What the
city
hell was
administrator.
filed or when and who?
Well, that's why I just asked, how do we know for sure what?
Well,
day?
that's right. Who, it's gotta be filed with some person, some
Yeah, with a
agency
date
here.
stamp.
It should
Does
be.
nobody actually know when it was filed?
We'll clarify. We'll
I
find out.
Clarify,
find
my
out.
God, this has been going on now for a month and you don't know if an application was filed or when?
That's why I
Who's in
called.
charge here?
Time out. That's why I called the morning after the council meeting and asked, was an application filed? And I was told yes.
Who told you that?
The administrator.
Who's
Holly.
Then why
Yes.
didn't she give us that answer
She
a
wasn't
week
at the
ago?
meeting. She wasn't at the meeting.
Maybe she should have been at the meeting. Maybe she should.
I
get
can't
rid of her.
answer for her.
She's useless.
Well, I can't answer for her.
No, you
Neither
can't.
can I.
There's a lot of tension. And I understand that tension. From the first time I stood at the podium here, and Mr. Johnson, you weren't here, but it was Mr. Bittner who said, let's put this thing back into the committee in that regards, the Jaeger property.
That was the play. Yes.
Correct. And my first comments at that meeting were, we have a very difficult time as citizens looking at the council and looking at the administration and knowing what is factual, what is accurate, what is timely. Now, I understand government. I worked in it for 30 years. I'm not saying it's simple, but the fact that the 5 of you don't know and haven't seen a piece of paper that validates that application is sadly, a metaphor for how this system is working in Mentor-on-the-Lake.
Well,
Whether-
can I say one thing quick?
I will finish my sentence. Whether it's David Evy's job, whether it's Holly's job, whether it's all of your job, or whether it's a city charter problem, we should think that through. You might tell by my voice, I don't think this is a really good moment for the city. Because there have been this many and twice as many standing up asking for the very best possible we could do as articulate, educated citizens to try and slow down these projects and allow for commitment to take our level up, to include good long-distance vision, good long-distance planning, and we missed it on Tuesday. There's no question we missed it. I'm sorry, but I'm angry. I know other people are angry. You may be angry too. The fact is, you may know what's going on just by walking down the hall and seeing Holly or seeing Dave and saying, show me this piece of paper. I don't trust that there's an application been proven yet. None of the words you've said tell me there's an application in. When I see it, and I see it was dated Friday, I'll know why that realtor didn't call me for 4 days. That's my feeling. Your obligation is to help us get factual, transparent, truthful information. With regard to the moratorium, I have comments about that. There have been some wonderful comments over the last 5 weeks about the architectural design of the buildings that would be new in this city. If our committee system and our ordinance system cannot look at Dollar General and say, we will not have a concrete box sitting on Andrews Road with a bright orange sign, then we have to figure that part out. That's something that should be in going forward, moratorium or not. This touches all kinds of things. They believe they're a convenience store, but they're telling the rental community down the street, and they're telling David Evie, his words to me, this is a place where people can get food. You don't buy food that keeps you healthy in that store. So we're getting hoodwinked, and our mayor got hoodwinked. So do we have anything in our ordinance that says if you're going to be selling food products, you have to have a rather high standard of it? Do we have an ethics written into our things that said we will not have sales gimmicks? Those are the kind of things that are important to this community. Sorry, Mr. Johnson, you can interrupt now.
No, that's okay.
Obviously, this is a very emotionally charged topic for everybody.
So one other thing to touch on the transparency point is when I was talking, what I was trying to get out of Mr. Lyons was how far has the formal application been submitted? And it had not been. So as of that day, and I was told repeatedly, and I was trying to get I wasn't getting a straight answer from him. So if this had been done weeks prior or months prior, it was not known to even the law director at that time, or he told me something that was knowingly false, which at this point, I wouldn't have put anything past anybody, and I'm sorry if that offends anyone. We have been trying to get up to speed on the processes, so as not to waste your time. And I don't know how much fact you all are getting, because we've been getting different versions of the same stories, or even different versions of the same document within the same meeting. So it's extremely troubling to me, and I'm imagining to most of the people sitting on this side of the table, but I'm hoping it is upsetting to some of you, and that something can be done about it for all of us to benefit.
Okay, so to answer your question on what we know, okay, and maybe this is my own fault. The wellness clinic now, do you know when I found out about it? When I saw it being built.
Me too.
We as council do not get every single thing that goes through with a business.
But this is
But wait.
not something that has been quiet. This is something that has been front and center
Sure.
for at least 2 months.
Sure,
So you should, if it's
But
not
it's a-
walking to your door, you should be knocking.
it's a
back.
business that falls within the regulations of what
understand
it's known for.
But there's been
So
so
that's
much.
why we have to either change the regulation or the zoning, but we can't tell a business no if they're
I'm not
within
saying
the requirements.
it's to get the straight answer from the mayor and from Holly.
I can't answer for them. That,
I'm not saying that.
you know,
I understand that.
I don't
just
know
saying.
when it was filed.
I have that answer.
There's a lot of like businesses that have gone in that I did not know until we set the regulations for what businesses we do and do not want.
Mhm.
After that, as long as it's not needing any special permits or special things,
Right.
we don't know.
Well, who does know? What's the process?
Yeah.
Say a developer approaches Mentor on the Lake.
Okay.
What is the process? How does it funnel? And how do you guys eventually find out?
Go ahead. He was,
So it's the difference between administration and legislation. We do not administrate in the city, we legislate. So all we can do is create the laws, and then the administration has to enforce them. So the process for a business is they would fill out a business application, they would go to the administration for that. If it's going to be a new construction, such as the Dollar General or the Well Now Clinic, they would have to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That process would then start with a pre-plan, which was done for both the Well Now as well as the Dollar General. And they presented that at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Then they would have to present the formal plan. Once that has been approved and go through that process. So Planning and Zoning would now do all that stuff. Once they approve it, then the administration gives its final approval on it. And that goes forward. Legislation, we have nothing to do with those businesses whether they come into the city, don't come into the city, other than the legislative process. So we create the ordinances that define what's okay, what's not okay, what size sign you can have, where your sign can be located, colors of your building, pick your thing. Legislation, that's all we have control over. We do not have control over anything administrative. So I don't know when a new business goes into the plazas. Like, surprise to me, you know, like, we didn't know there was gonna be a flooring store come in. Cool, I'm glad to see a flooring store come in.
There's no communication.
Why isn't there communication?
I don't think it needs to be, because we've set what allows you to go in there, so why do we need to oversee every, I mean, we can't really.
So let me see if I got this straight.
One second, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
There should be some communication, even if it's just notification from the administration to members of council, because I don't know about the rest of you on council, but I get phone calls and people stop me, what's going in up the corner?
Sure.
It would be nice to
And you
say,
guys don't know,
well, this
right?
is what it is.
We do know because we.
No, we don't.
Agenda to planning
We
and
can
zoning,
do
and it's all on planning and zoning.
You go to all the planning and zoning meetings, I don't.
But we get the information for them.
I haven't gotten information for the last two meetings either.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I read them in the meeting.
Point your committee report.
Yes.
No, I'm talking about the actual minutes from the planning and zoning committee.
Since you guys are the legislatures, can't you legislate into the ordinances that there needs to be some kind of a system so that you guys are made aware or
Yes.
notified or that what's coming in?
Yeah.
So zoning is aware of it and it's somehow, you could write that in the new future legislation.
We could.
Yeah.
But then what are we gonna do besides
It's just
tell people,
information.
just information to know, like, I'm not gonna be able to stop somebody. Because apparently they've already followed the guidelines, the regulations that were in place.
It's-
Otherwise it would never come.
Are we talking about Dollar General? I'm sorry.
Well, any future.
Well, right now, yes,
Any
the Dollar
future
General is within 100% regulation.
Right, so we're not
Correct.
talking about everyday business. We're talking about this exact scenario with the Dollar General that each and every one of you has known as long as we have.
Sure.
So I do think that this is a little bit different of a scenario because with Tuesday, it wasn't an emergency. Turns out it was. So like, to me, that's where I feel like either we all collectively are being misled at someone else's, someone else has a plan and they're keeping everyone in the dark. Or, like, that's how it is feeling on this end, because it certainly was an emergency if that application was going in 2 days later.
I have the answer to that. I reached out to the administrator and asked her what day they filed their application. It was filed on May 2nd.
So then Mr. Lyons really should have
Didn't
known, yeah,
It
so
was filed
as our
on
law
May-
director, and this going on that long, I truly find that hard.
It was filed on May 2nd.
That's when Holly was in her community.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
The mayor should have known that.
Right. I
But
can't
he
answer for
himself
that.
said it
That's
didn't
why
even
I'm
go
asking.
through.
Well, he sat right there, was just stone-faced about it.
I can't speak to that. I can
Right.
give you
So,
the
but
information.
you
that
know,
I
I'm
have.
That YouTube is not
That
right.
we have on
That's about
somebody's-
them, though,
I
right?
can't speak on somebody's reaction. I can
So-
give you the information I have.
Right.
What's very clear, what's very clear
Just one second.
is that if May 2nd was the filing date, then certainly either Holly or Dave or both of them knew that. And they sat here meeting after meeting with that question being asked, and were not forthright. Now this goes beyond transparency.
Mhm.
This goes beyond what are these people up to? Do they have any responsibility at all to the council, to planning and zoning? They basically sat there for a month. If what you say is true, and I guess nobody here has actually seen the piece of paper, right? Have you actually seen the application?
No, I have.
No, but Holly says it was filed. Well, I agree with some of the other folks here. We are very skeptical of anything that the mayor or Miss Holly has to say. They have been anything but honest and forthright with the people of this community, and maybe not very honest and forthright with city council. This is starting to look very, very ugly.
I agree. And
Hold on one second. She was.
So it comes down to accountability.
Mhm.
You guys have been put in the office from people that voted for you. What's your vision for our community? what do you want to make out of it? You're responsible for that. You guys figure it out. You're put in that chair. And that's what you own. You own it. You're accountable for it. You need to fix it. You know what we want? You live here allegedly. We live here. This is where it needs to go. Do you want a community that has, in 10 years, it's gonna be urgent care, it's gonna be dollar store, it's gonna be a community of not growth, it's gonna be existent. We have an opportunity here to make growth, and you're responsible, you're accountable, you should be accountable to make that happen. Not, okay, what's the easy way out? Where you don't have to think about it, you don't have to have a growth plan, you can just point fingers at who should have, somebody said, I called, somebody has the ball, I don't. You own it, fix it.
I don't disagree with you thinking we're all accountable, and I disagree with you thinking we're not working hard. That's why we're having. these
Well,
meetings.
it's hard to see it, so you have
That's
to
fine.
understand that.
No, we appreciate
here's
you
the
being
deal.
here tonight.
We do, and we appreciate
We
it.
have these business areas set up. I cannot tell a business to come here or not come here. Okay? Just because we don't want it, but the dollar store, we can put the moratorium on, and that's why we're here to discuss this tonight.
But-
But what?
But communities have done tax abated, to have a growth of something that you want, there are ways to do that. There are ways to.
We do have tax incentives and everything in this city. Nobody has come here. That's what you guys are hard, it's hard to understand. These have been open. The Wellness Clinic was the first business to come in here since.
I know Jennifer and Company, she totally
Before
allowed that. I
She
mean, I
should have
know-
applied for it.
Huh?
There's,
She should have applied to
oh, she was
CR.
outside. Okay, I apologize. She was outside. She could have applied for it. Even,
Well, no, I'm just saying that she totally
that's great.
revamped that place. She
Mhm.
had a food truck out there during a pandemic and welcomed the whole community to come see her brand new salon
And I think that's
because she's
awesome.
a longtime member of
She
like,
got shut down the first
Yeah.
10 minutes.
in 10
From-
minutes, somebody came down and shut her down.
For what?
Or
They didn't
or
want,
what?
because they didn't want the food truck. She
Right.
had the food truck there to support.
there's
all the
regulations for a
employees.
food truck. That's
Right.
a state. You can't,
Right.
that's not a city. No,
Right,
it's
but I
state,
mean, you
state,
know.
county.
Well, I guess the thing
Cities
is,
do,
if we had
but
a
either-
vision, which we've been talking
Right.
about for a couple months, then you do have, it's not like you're saying, you would be able to encourage a specific type of business to come in here, like a Jennifer and Company. It doesn't have to be a huge, big
Chain.
retailer. It's just those kind of businesses that can thrive in this community.
But you're also talking private property. These
Well,
owners are not, you'll even notice, this-
Well,
Mr. Andrews, I don't know if anybody's ever
Talking
worked
about
with him.
the walls.
The what?
We gotta quit talking about the walls and be creative.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah, I
small
don't
enough
think
We're
that
not
we
that should be
will be
looking
able to do
backwards
that.
and using.
What we can do
has
is
been.
set what we want to see or don't want to see.
Yes.
That's what we can do.
Right.
I don't,
Then
we
let's
can't
do
do
it.
beyond that.
All
We
right,
have
we're
said
ready.
no car dealerships. We have done no strip clubs. Those are things that are not coming. This dollar store moratorium could have went into effect if people cared a long time ago when they saw the second one come up. I mean, shame on us, maybe
Well,
not
shame
thinking
on
about it,
us
shame on everybody for not
Shame
thinking
on
about
us.
it then.
Wait a second. I stood at an ordinance meeting and
Mhm.
I said, we need to do this. And the response was, we can't do anything about it. And that's when I went home and I did homework and I passed it to all y'all.
Was that a long, I mean,
Yes, you did.
okay.
That was December, Paul, or
Yeah.
November?
November.
I was on it and y'all ignored it.
I-
And that's where people get pissed.
Right.
Is we bring you information and you go, yeah, this is nice. What does the mayor and Holly want? And that's the attitude we get. It may not be true, but that's how we feel.
I was
That's the
not
way it
there and I
works.
didn't know,
No, I'm not, I'm
You
saying.
sat out here.
but what I'm saying is we can control them now.
But
That's what we have.
this is how you're getting the anger is we bring you issues and you ignore us. You treat us like we're children. We know better. You know, we're counsel.
I don't believe that.
You
don't
don't,
think
I
I've
know,
ignored
because
a
you
lot.
listen.
Because anytime anything's been brought up, we try to get out there, we try to go over it, if at the least, go over an ordinance.
So that leads to believe that some of council knew, or the administration, that Dollar General was looking. If we came to you months before and told you we need to consider legislation, and we're told we can't, when we have documents from all over the United States, including Ohio, in a neighboring county, that have done things. So how does that look, besides not dishonest or not being forthright? And I'm not blaming you, Kevin. I'm just saying, I don't even think you were at that ordinance meeting.
I was.
So,
Before I was up.
I think the good news about all of this, and trying to look at the light at the end of this tunnel, is let's learn from what transpired. Let's learn, one, on how it motivated the city, and that everybody can now see how much the city cares, which I think is a great thing. And I also think that let's look at the mistakes that were made and how they can be avoided, because through legislation, we can try to avoid making the same mistake twice and figure out what to do. And so, you know, maybe we take it beyond just a moratorium. Maybe we do change some of the ordinances the way they should
I
be
think that's what we
changed.
should do, is
moving
look
forward,
into,
so
see
that
if
we
we can
can
put it right in the
Do
ordinance.
exactly what everybody ultimately wants now, a vision. What is our long-term vision? I think it's unanimous. If there's one thing I think the whole community stands by is creating a vision. I think we can start
Logan
there.
has a vision, Leonard has a vision, all these other, I grew up in Strongsville, it was farm country.
Well,
They got a vision.
The
Now
will-be
look at it.
mayor is an architect, and
Mhm.
hence that's why you're seeing
Yes.
type of buildings
Right.
and the aesthetics that you want.
And we'll
We don't have that, and I know I brought that up in the mayor, not like my idea, he said we have CT consultants, which I'm not sure that that's the type, they're engineers, civil engineers, but I'd like to propose again that we do have some kind of architectural consulting. There's people here that are in real estate and design, but we just don't have that level. And for a project going through, why couldn't we, on a consultant basis, have it run through an independent architecture company, a design company? And make sure that they're addressing all of the aesthetics, because that's what we're looking at when we're walking down our streets. You know, that's what we want to see, a vision. And that's when we keep saying the word vision, we do mean vision, what we see. We're upset because of the Dollar General has a big yellow and black sign and it's a box store and it's ugly. Now, if that same store came in and it was aesthetically pleasing, when we walk down our street and they had some good things in there, good ideas, no one's gonna be upset. So that's, I think, what we're talking about.
Let me ask you that, because in this moratorium, it talks about like research and studies on those kinds of things. So you said that you're familiar with that kind of stuff. What, and I'm not gonna hold you to this, but just financially speaking, what do you think it would cost to have an independent person do some kind of workup or something like that on a project?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that. You know, I could help find the answer to that.
Like, are we talking like $5,000 or $50,000?
Is there anybody here?
No. And I'm just
It's
saying
probably an
because-
hourly charge. and the
Right, because
architect
those
will
are
be
kinds
the-
of things that we need to know to
That's
make
part
those
of this.
decisions.
But again, to
But it's a
Mr. Shaboom's
one-time
comment, if you
to
just
make
put in
those
no
decisions.
small box stores at 1258 or whatever it was, and this whole thing isn't necessary.
No.
If we can do it, yes, I would like to pursue it.
I mean, is that, is that a realistic option?
I would say this.
I think it is.
Then
It's a
the
permanent law.
moratorium wouldn't be as critical because you've got it covered right there.
You know, Dave Scarnati has a lot of experience with developments. I don't know what his credentials are, but he's an interested citizen. He has worked with developers, architects, and so on, most of his life, doing developments, plans, developments with visions. And he may not be exactly the right person to give you the vision, but I'm sure he would be happy to volunteer to spearhead an effort to bring in the right person, the
There's
right
people on planning and zoning now with that experience.
So who looks, planning and zoning will be determining the type of building style and all that.
Actually, we'd have to put it in ordinance first.
Already in the ordinance.
They've got
It's in the
it.
planning and
They can
zoning
determine.
ordinance that they can say. They can say yes.
What
no.
number? is
What
it?
number is that? What did you say, Patricia?
It's in 1258. You can find it.
Just receive it real quickly.
Clearly says monotony of design shall be avoided, variation of detail, form, and citing shall be used to provide visual interest.
Where are you at?
1258,
What?
So,
1258.
0.05 yard regulations.
you know, your concerns to be brought up about if this dollar store goes through would be at the planning and zoning. They have the ability to determine what it looks like.
They still do.
Yeah.
Still do, absolutely.
What about
And that's what I'm sitting here asking, does somebody, I'm not, it's not my field of study.
We'll do our homework and get costs on
Okay.
architects and help the committee out, and that's, you know,
Because I wouldn't even know. who to talk to.
because
I
I've
would.
got a couple of people I could talk to.
I would.
You said Dave will have a few people we could
That
talk
would
to.
be helpful.
Let's see if we can get some ideas on pricing, because, you know.
They
we gotta live with
might
it
be
for 15
amenable
years.
to
Well,
Let's
that.
get something we
Real
like.
quick, we gotta get back to this. So this little moratorium thing, mine, is it pretty much a decision we want to look at possibly just putting in.
Right, straight in
Because
the
there are
ordinance.
excluded businesses.
Excluding
That's code.
1258.
Right, I know, like I just said,
That would
dealerships.
future-proof better than.
So we want to add an
Right, because the
exclusion
moratorium
of
is
small
expired
box
in
stores
January.
with this
It's only
definition,
temporary.
Forget.
What is the process to get that in there?
us
And
making
what
up
will
the
be verbatim?
legislation.
Did that go in front of the ordinance committee?
Gotta go in front of the ordinance committee.
We,
Well, it'll have to go to planning and zoning for starters. They'll have to do it.
so I can have Mr. Lyons draw proposed legislation to include small box stores in the exclusions of businesses, and business one and business two. Anybody opposed to this?
The one guy that stood up, he's not here though.
Yeah.
The last,
Mr.
the mayor's friend.
Yeah,
He's not here.
The former councilman. We love
Nobody's
big box stores.
yeah.
I want everybody to
We
see,
want everybody
and then
to-
we're gonna leave that with
What
that.
we're trying to do is show that ideas, so that people can start to see a
It looks
vision.
prettier if it's gonna be
Something
there.
that looks like the library. I mean, the
Yeah.
library is
Library's
so
awesome.
So if they built the dollar store, they look like that.
beautiful. Yeah, I.
Stay in that
absolutely.
nautical
And that-
lakefront theme.
Absolutely. That's a big, think of that thing.
If they mimic that type of architecture, that would be the coolest dollar store.
It would be.
They just came out with the vision.
We could get them to do
Not-
it. Great.
I would
As
still
long
comment
as it's no
negatively.
weapons
All right,
We're on the lake, so.
Real quick, I'm gonna
And then we should strongly
We're gonna
encourage them to have
exclude
fresh fruit
small
and
box
vegetables
stores.
at least. to
A
help.
A dollar store with a 70-foot
And
tall
two,
lighthouse.
everybody's way.
Well, like you
That's
said,
right.
I can make it.
It's
what they wanted. I mean, if we're gonna be stuck with
Gaming
it, we
store.
should stuck with
At least
something
it's
that's
a
gonna look
try.
at. That's the.
Well, I,
Let's get it done.
let's start with this. The gaming stores, I'm not completely opposed to.
So you'd like to have Andrew Jones full of gaming stores?
No, I didn't say that, but we're not, that's not part of this. Let's talk about
This.
this one.
And we're going on an assumption that the application was submitted May 2nd, and that there's sort of this thought process on our end, just because of the lack of transparency, that no matter what is real, somehow it's still going through. And I'm not saying that's all on y'all's part, and we are not all finger pointing to any of the individuals. I want you to understand that. It's just in general, we're at a council meeting and there's not a lot of communication back and forth. You know, it's just sort of, the process is frustrating all of us. So I don't want any of you to think we're
No.
pointing fingers at you.
I don't. I
We
think-
appreciate what you're doing.
If anything, we've all dropped
We
the
need
ball in the
more.
past.
Yeah.
We all have. If we wanted to limit it, it should have been done before.
So I don't want to
I-
assume it's done, so.
I'm not either.
So
That's-
my
We're
question,
working on this.
moratorium versus just straight up no small box store as an ordinance. If that is not done, you know, what's the timing on getting this moratorium, maybe consideration for emergency, or getting this new ordinance language as an emergency?
Okay.
What can get done faster?
Good question, but if we go with this moratorium that's proposed, there's a lot of studies and stuff that have to be done, and I don't see majority of council even wanting
Can that just be?
this.
So an
Because they're
ordinance
not
change, an
plausible to
ordinance
do.
change is more expedient.
Yes.
I would say, but I don't I can't say because each member has their own.
Right. Doesn't say Windows study.
One other comment I would make to that point is council already had the opportunity to vote for an emergency ban last week and it was already not passed. So that, I don't think trying to get another emergency move for that would help us in any way, shape or form. I think moving toward a ban specific or an outlawed.
But I will
business
tell you,
property
this
in
would be on
ordinance.
second reading. If we propose new legislation, if it goes to 3 readings, it's gonna go one more than this one.
Unless we vote to suspend it and
I
then turn it
can't-
down.
I'm not gonna say whatever
And
he's
then-
gonna say.
Correct, that's what I'm saying, because we've already not suspended
Right.
the moratorium, but that doesn't mean we couldn't go for an emergency and not suspend normal policy toward passing this.
Correct.
If that's going back to planning and zoning,
If
Monday.
Monday. That if an ordinance change, we need review by planning and zoning, meets on Monday.
Okay,
And it won't be ready.
by next Monday.
No,
I mean, it's just adding language into current. I don't,
it'd be great, but
I can get it to him, but I don't
it's getting
see why
him
he.
to do it.
He's adding other restricted
You
business.
got that together pretty quick.
Yeah, you did that.
I mean, I'll talk to him, but
Sure, maybe we can get it done. It'd be great.
what's your thoughts, Rob? If I get it to him, he would give it to him. Possibly get the plans on it.
All you can do is try.
That's all, that's it. All you can do is
All
try.
right, so I'm gonna get it to him.
Let's hope he
And we can
does,
try.
but
If that's the wish of this committee.
but it's under 12 here.
So what do we
I
want
must-
to do?
I personally would like to change the language about the studying the impact of this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So that the developer has to have this.
We're not, we're getting rid of more.
I said
Those
I
are
would
pictures of more of what they
consider
want it to
let it
look
do
like
the second
versus
Put it on.
big yellow
suspended and pass
and
it.
black signs.
You would like something like some of the,
And let the other keep going forward.
let's see if we
Or
can
the
get him.
library.
But we're getting rid of more. We don't want.
Just something
You don't
more
have to get rid of it.
better to look at than the big.
It'd be great if they do the library.
That's it, yeah.
I'm just thinking, and I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'm just thinking they have a design that they like and they don't deviate that.
Well,
They can deviate to some degree, but how far they will.
Well, and if we want to look at it from an ordinance standpoint that already exists, if we look at the purpose for the zoning, 1240.01, you know, and under point number 1,
I don't think.
1240.01.
1240, yeah.
Point 01.
Or.
1240.
I got it. The purpose, yeah.
So go to number 1 down below that, to
Yeah.
protect the character and the value of the agricultural, residential, business, industrial, and recreational areas.
I agree.
And
That's
to
great.
ensure they're orderly and beneficial
I
development.
agree.
So that point, I think we can use to an argument of, we want to protect the character of Mentor on the Lake and the value of the residential and business area, which is exactly what we're picking up where we live. That's the
Better
point
than
to
that
argue.
yellow sign.
That's the point to argue right now.
So does that,
Good.
that's our current law,
That's correct.
right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
Can
I
you
would
pass
make,
that to
I
Kevin?
would
Would
make
you
them,
mind, Mr. Sugar, passing those drawings?
They want-
I would make them do it regardless.
So
of the
Kevin and Paul,
motion.
did you, I don't know if you guys
We're not
heard this
I would have
conversation.
that.
Listen,
part of the
everybody.
ordinances for zoning.
Listen,
Did you guys hear this conversation here? I have it on the side. So currently in existence in our ordinance, is this a
So-
law that we can
So this
ask
is,
to be upheld?
so under
That's
12,
what I would-
under
that's what I would-
1240.01. So that is the purpose of the zoning code. And
Mhm.
if you look under bullet point number 1, the point of the zoning code is to protect the character and value of the agricultural, residential, business, industrial, and recreational areas and to assure their orderly and beneficial development. So the idea being that if we are trying to protect the character of the residential and business district of Mentor on the Lake, that we would argue that, you know, number 1, certainly if we're going to push the dollar store to do something from an architectural standpoint, that might be a point to argue based on what is already existing, what's already written. A tougher one, I think, would be to argue, you know, to say, well, if you go above that, on the very first point underneath, it says the zoning code is adopted to promote and protect the public health, safety, convenience, comfort, and property and general welfare. So, I mean, if you want to argue from the standpoint of do dollar stores provide good things toward public health? The answer is no. So if you look at in 2015, there were 20,000 Dollar Generals and general dollar stores in the United States. As of 2022, there are over 30,000. The last study I saw done showed that less than 450 of 30,000 stores, so that is 1.5% of all dollar stores, actually sell fresh fruit, produce, milk, meats, or cheeses. Everything else in the other 98.5% of dollar stores is prepackaged, on the shelf, prepared meals. That clearly does not support public health. Now, could you argue that it's providing some food versus no food? Yes. So I don't know if you could really argue that as a point of trying to keep them out, but maybe we could at least use the protect the character and value of the residential and business district of Mentor on the Lake, which is written in bullet point number 1 of 1240.01.
Good point.
I think we could argue the other one too.
Here's
Only if it's not a done deal.
Here's the problem with
That's
that
up to
argument. It's a
zoning,
great
right?
argument, but we
Planning
have, if I was the attorney on the opposing side,
We can't.
I would say, look at the character of the rest of the development.
Okay, so that's why we do this going forward.
So exactly, we have to
Define
create a
what the
master plan,
character is.
define character, because a lawyer is gonna try and say, let me show you example A, B, C, D of the character. I don't see a uniformity, I don't see a standard, I don't see anything, so how can you
Fair.
argue that point on my property? See the issue? So we need to create that.
So we
All
take
right,
lots
so-
of pictures of the library.
We're gonna go back to this again. Michelle, your wish, as I can tell, was to be adding the
Let's try to get it
exclusion,
in the ordinance and see how fast you want.
put it under ordinance, excluding small box stores with this definition.
With
right
this
here.
definition,
Yes.
yeah.
And then we're
And
going,
we'll cross our fingers that Lance will have it right.
Michelle, I have a question. I think you're the best person to answer. Since you're the only person who has recently spoken with Holly. Is this document, this so-called application, is this a secret document or is this a public document that's open to be viewed by the citizens of the community?
I will ask that. I
Yeah,
don't
we have
want to
to.
speak, I don't want to give you the wrong answer, I don't know, but I will ask that
It
question.
would be really nice to know if all this is defined as secret, we can't know what's going on.
So
or if in
typically when
fact,
people file a zoning application, we aren't told, because that means every time anybody filed any application, it would be a lot to.
you don't have to. What I want to know, is it available?
I will ask,
And when can we get an answer?
What is your opinion?
I will have it by the council,
About
How about
The zoning
tomorrow?
application.
because I am working tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't, I work a full-time job, so I don't want to say, yes, I can do this tomorrow, and I'll just say,
What's her
by the
name?
council.
She here once in a while or she here
Yeah,
every day?
she's here every day, she's a full-time.
The moratorium proposal is
Yes.
on the agenda.
no, what about the
Um,
Hey, Bill, to
Yeah.
answer your question,
They are going to.
Rob and I
present
both
a
agree
bunch
that
of
that
There's
zoning
Monday.
application is a matter of public
I'm
record.
pretty sure, yeah.
That's what I would
I
think.
never know.
You should be able to request.
So I'm
copies.
gonna show up tomorrow.
But yes,
Yeah.
And talk to this Holly, I said, "Can you guys please see that document?"
You should be able to
Says
request a
nobody
copy. of it.
here in
You
the
should
room,
be
as
able
far as
to
I can tell, has
request
ever
a
actually seen the document and knows what it says. You haven't looked
No,
at
it's an
it?
ask for
Oh,
it.
I've got a photocopy.
There's very little in government that you can't ask for, that they have to provide.
That's what
yeah,
they
you
thought. I
could,
was
you
just
could go up
asking.
and fill out a form, a public request form, you should be able to do.
It's in there.
It's in there because it has car sales and some other strip clubs and someone else is in
Are
there.
you looking for buildings that are not allowed?
In the
Yeah, the
business-
restricted ones,
in the
12.
business
This is,
district.
this is sad when you have to find it for us.
It's in the- I don't have-
I was looking at it a little a minute ago. so
I
it's a
don't
lot.
have any of those.
He is multi-talented.
Restricted businesses.
What are you looking for?
1258,
12.
1258.01 maybe, 02.
Yeah, 1258.
Where does it say once?
So this is what I want to
the
do.
whole table in there.
That's just what we're allowed to.
Zoning
Yeah,
district.
that is also NP for not permitted.
It's 12.
Correct, you would, they would have to be changed to the NP. That's correct.
Okay, so we are going to move
Added in there is that's not permitted.
To put,
Business district is 1258 permitted buildings.
Yeah. And Rob is correct. It's 125802 is permitted buildings and uses, and there's classification as NP that is not permitted.
not,
Correct.
so,
But car dealerships aren't in there. Not at least on.
I swear they were, but, okay,
No.
so what we're gonna, this committee has decided we want to do is we're gonna, pretty much the moratorium is gonna be out.
I disagree with that. I think it's.
No, you should do that also. You should have 3 or 4 different avenues
Yeah.
that cover all bases.
Yes.
Yep.
So once it's put into the legislation, I mean,
Then it becomes a moot topic.
then that's it.
Kevin,
Not
if I
there.
may.
The moratorium is still on the table because it's still on council agenda and it's up for second reading. So it doesn't go
We-
away tonight. It is still on the agenda and still will be on the agenda.
And if
for
by
second
some
reading.
wild
And if
fact,
this
the
got
permit has
done
not
in
been applied
time,
for, the moratorium actually might be
it could be a different story.
Plus, if the moratorium passes before we can get this ordinance in place, it could still use to serve to tell that developer, really don't want you.
Correct.
Yes, that's true.
So, and that's why I would rather leave the moratorium in
Okay.
play, but I would change the wording of part of it. So that study that is proposed in there.
Yeah.
That the developer has to provide that independent study, not by the
Yes.
developer, not by
No.
council paying for it.
No.
Yes.
And that change I don't see any other problem with it.
So let me ask you a question. Now. We passed the moratorium. Our end result is we don't want box stores, correct?
Right.
So why are we gonna make them do a study?
Do you
Why
think
are we
they might-
making them spend the money? to do
Oh,
a study? When we're just saying,
Can we
we
just
don't
take
want
it out
any.
and say moratorium, period?
That,
Nothing else
I would agree
required?
with more so than making them do a study, when we're already saying,
First of all,
Forget the study, we just passed the moratorium, forget all this other.
well, that's in the moratorium, that's why we're talking
okay,
about.
then strike that entire check.
Take it out.
Just strike it out.
That is fine.
But the other
You guys wanna
thing,
just put moratorium till we get, I'm okay with that, but I'm not making them do a study when we're not gonna let them be there anyway. They're not anyway.
first of all, who's the part that's them doing the study? Right, Dollar General?
No, anybody.
Okay,
Anybody
I don't think anybody else is gonna come.
I'm not saying they are or aren't.
I'm saying I don't think they will.
Mr. Commissioner,
Yes, sir.
I like the idea of having many avenues available to you. And you can back out of any of them like that. You're allowed to back out of them. We know that can happen. But if you keep all the options available, back out later is okay. I don't know that, because I haven't read them in detail, I don't know that these are the only ordinance that should be thought of. So there may be more, and we may want to take Scott's idea up and let's talk about this business operations. Is it a food store? Is it a convenience store? All kinds of things that can be talked about in other ordinances. I think that maybe is where you were going, Mr. Johnson, is trying to really drill down on the ordinances. And so maybe we have to do our part too, drill down a little deeper. But keep many options available to you and back out later on.
I'm not opposed. What I'm saying is the way it's written currently, presented in front of me, of all these studies that have to be done, whether or not
We have to
we
delete
gotta
it.
get rid of
I
that.
think you're trying to be
Yes.
too careful on behalf of whoever might
Or,
be offended by.
no, it's actually us. It says right in here, council's responsible, not, it says nothing about developers.
Yes, but it doesn't. need to
We're
be done
responsible.
yet.
for it.
It doesn't need to be done yet.
And that's my point too.
You can back out of that in the future. You can back out of that in 2 months and 6 months.
Well,
and 5
But
months.
the purpose of this whole meeting right now was by Mr. Johnson to figure out how we would
It
do
was to
this,
draft a version of a moratorium.
Of how we
that can
would-
live with.
or how we would do
And-
these
and-
studies. what I would
Kevin,
propose.
first of all, I'll lay you on, any store that's put on Mentor's agenda anywhere, that the developer has to have an independent study done on the traffic patterns and so forth.
They absolutely should.
So we don't even
But-
need to put it in here
But we,
because that
well,
would be
we
done.
don't require that, do we?
Oh,
Do we?
yeah, we required.
Our planning and zoning?
dollar.
I just want to clarify, since you keep talking about the studies, that wasn't the main purpose of this meeting. The main purpose
How?
of this meeting was all the other stuff as well.
Right.
Architectural details.
Right.
Security requirements. All this other stuff that's listed there.
Right, that's what I'm saying, anything that's proposed in this written.
Not
ordinance.
just,
Right,
So if it would have passed last week, the way it's written now, council
Yeah.
would have had to pay for studies and stuff just to
Right.
prevent them from coming in?
yeah.
Yes.
And that's so.
And that's,
Yeah, you were
and
right.
that's a
Yes.
No,
non-starter.
actually, it says
No
we
money.
wish to study the impact.
It doesn't say it has to be paid for, we just wish to study it,
Yeah.
but what's studying it, define that.
And I don't know
And
anybody
there's
who's
a
gonna
whole
do a
lot. I
study
mean,
for
we could
free.
have done the Cleveland State Fire students, we could go to Kent
Okay.
State, anybody in public policy, there's lots of public policy.
So then is it to my understanding, we strike these sections
That.
of requirements, put the moratorium on,
So we need amended.
it's gonna,
We could amend it. It could come.
Yeah, we can amend. it.
then we're going to work on, well, I'm going to work on getting Mr. Lyons legislation for adding small box stores to our restricted
As NP.
SNPs. That would understand.
So what are you proposing to strike exactly?
So city council wishing to,
Study
that's gone.
that entire paragraph.
All down up until the
Personally,
last one. So strike this 3 sections.
personally, I don't see a problem with those sections, but
I wouldn't strike it. I mean, you're saying we don't wish to study architectural details or security requirements or hours of operation, noise and litter, any of those other things.
I'm not gonna study them on something we don't want.
Right.
But it's
That's why am I gonna-
already required.
Because
in
we
the
already
other.
have some that exist, so we should probably try and put some regulations on those.
Yeah.
Because we
On
can still
the-
do that. And whether they impact other businesses that come into our
Okay.
city. Do we want those things? Do we want architectural diversity?
100%.
Well, then we need to make sure that those things are clearly labeled in their ordinances. We don't want to just
You're talking
So-
on the existing ones.
existing ones, anything that comes into the city. It isn't just about small box stores. Yes, we don't want the small box store.
This says small box stores.
this is.
I'm well aware what the moratorium says,
Right.
but it's the actions that we're going to do in this moratorium don't just impact small box stores. They impact any other stores that come into our community as well.
Do they? It says the impact of these types of.
Right, these ones, we're talking
Yes.
specific group.
But
I'm lost.
if we're talking about architectural diversity, that doesn't just impact small box stores. Do we want architectural diversity of any stores that come into
But
our
that
city?
wouldn't be written
But
in
yeah,
this
it's
ordinance.
specific.
I
This is
understand,
specific
but the
to this.
process of doing it, the legislation that we would come up with
For,
What you just said.
for architectural diversity, for any of those things,
so you're talking a
I'm
total
talking
different
about
ordinance.
yes, I'm talking about,
See, I
I'm
was
not talking about
just
specifically
this.
these.
This is
There's
what I was-
nothing to take out of this. We should just leave it as it is. There's no reason to amend it. It's fine to say we wish to study these things. It doesn't say we're going to pay for a study. It says we wish to study it,
For small box stores.
yes. But I'm saying we should have some legislative plan to do some of these things, not just related to small box stores, but all businesses in general.
I get what you're saying.
And
So
that
like
works
the
toward a
community-
city plan.
So like the
Yeah,
community
right.
development.
It's kind of like,
community development.
when I was talking to one of our residents, who used to be a councilman here in the city, I told him, I said, the comment that was made about, does anybody have a vision of what this city should really look like? And I said, I have never heard of one in my entire time in this city, which is pushing 50 years. And he looked at me, he said, well, what's your vision for that area down there? I said, honestly, the closest thing I could come to is something like a Geneva on the Lake, where you had people going down for entertainment, for recreation. Because that's what that area used to be. Where the water plant is, used to be an amusement park. That entire area down there was filled with different arcade games and stuff. And we're busy working on that in the history buff thing at the library. Tomorrow night, that's where I'll be. But that whole area could be like that. He said, so you're thinking about something like a putt-putt thing? I said, yeah, that would be okay. How about a golf cart track? I said, well, if it wasn't around residential, possibly, because it would be too noisy. He said, what about golf cart rentals? Sure, why not? Because when you look at it, he happens to know the people that owns Pelicans. I was dumbfounded by what he claimed they made the first month.
Yep.
It was like, wow. From a snow cone place in Meadow of the Lake, in one of the coldest months you could ever open. They did great. God bless them. That is phenomenal. But that type of business carried on through that entire quarter. Could be great. We have a marine place down there. He was here, if you didn't notice, the other night at council meeting. He had something he wanted to bring up and he walked out of here so angry. He said, screw it. I mean, I understand the anger, trust me. Most of you know I understand that anger. But there is no vision. Other than, here comes somebody with their money, it's plopped it down and we're going, okay, let's build it.
But there are ways to encourage that. I mean, unfortunately, I think that the future of our city is tied to our identity, which is the water.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Mentor owns the parkland, and that's the big
Yeah.
problem. If we had
You would
developed
think.
water access to, in the parks, you wouldn't have to court businesses, they would come, because then, I mean, similar, you can use Geneva on the lake if that's sort of the, you know, the vision that you have or the example you want to show, but if you had public access to the beach, to the water, to developed it, like we had talked about, a dock or a marina, or people get a restaurant in that space, and then you have boat pull-up traffic and that kind of thing, but even if you just have this place, the businesses will come, you'll have a sandwich shop, you'll have picnics, you'll have a wine store, you'll have a surf shop, you'll have, you know, a bikini store, you'll have, you know, lake tchotchke store, you'll have.
Souvenir.
Exactly, you'll have,
There used to be a
you
souvenir
know,
shop.
places where people can buy swim fins and snorkels and, you know, blow up inflatable things, I
I
mean,
agree.
beach things, those things will come, but you have to have
Agree.
something there that's worth it. Other people will come from other cities to use it, but,
I don't see us ever owning that part.
well, that's,
Trust me, I'm trying.
no, I know, but that's the thing, is that those are the kinds of things where you don't even have to specify what you want. Those things will follow what's there, but we don't have anything.
But that's a vision.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that is a vision, and
Yeah.
I know I stopped up here to purchase a, permit for my garage sale, the community sale,
Uh-huh.
and I talked to her. And I told her I was coming to the council meeting, you know, about the dollar store and the apartments down here, and she said, yeah, the same people, you know, that vote down the restaurant that was gonna go in there are also against the rental and the dollar store. And I'm like, what are you talking, I heard about, she goes, yeah, we had financial investors, they wanted to put a big, nice restaurant over there. You know, it was Mentor, but we, you know, had to vote something and we voted it down, so the deal went away.
Okay, I want to
And
stop
then,
you.
Where did
and then
we
she
vote it
said-
down?
and then she said, you know what, how many parks you think Mentor's gonna need? They just built a new party center over there on Spring Garden. They dumped in some money down here with a new roof and HVAC system. She was telling me pretty much that she expects Mentor to sell that park. And then she said, you know what, then community, then you deal with what Mentor chooses to put in there.
First of all, we did not vote down anything.
Right.
Nobody voted down anything.
No.
We approved the grant, the city to apply for a grant to put the elevator down at the park that they said they needed. Because their thoughts, their vision was putting the restaurant in,
Right.
down there, a high-end restaurant with a party center down below. I don't know if any of you are aware, there's 3 levels to that place.
Right.
And the second level was going to be the party room, as far as I know. We did approve that. It took some time because there were a lot of unanswered questions for the community about what happens to the green space down there. We did a virtual meeting with the city of Mentor during, I think it was a zoning meeting, I'm not sure, or an ordinance meeting, but they assured us they want to minimize the loss of green space down there for this project. Now, I can assure you, one of my friends is a Mentor councilman. He is my personal financial advisor. And he assured me that they are still pursuing the restaurant down there. So it's not a dead issue.
So,
It is
yeah, but
funny.
she made it sound like us residents
Yeah, no,
that,
no,
and that's what I mean, you get two
No.
different stories.
no, it wasn't the residents, it wasn't our council. I can tell you exactly where the fault lied. Fault actually points back to the county commission. They got to approve or deny the grant.
All right, we can talk about that after.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah,
back to
you
this
can
really
talk
quick.
about
Back into this area. I just want to say
Thanks for keeping on point.
All right, so
I believe the
three
moratorium.
proposals, leave the moratorium in place and as written.
Yes,
And that brings us back to what we originally had this to figure out how we were going to do these things.
just leave it. It says we want to study. It doesn't say we're going to. Because it doesn't really matter, because if you get the ordinance in place for the exceptions, then fine and dandy. It goes to that gentleman or the lady said back there, one of the two, about have multiple avenues in which to look at this.
But I don't want to have things in that say we should do this without having. a
It doesn't
plan
say
on
we
how
should,
to
we
do
wish
it.
to.
Right.
But
Wish to or
also,
should, to me.
don't rely on verbiage alone. I would put a physical limit so that there is space and distance from the other stores. But the other two stores are gonna be grandfathered in.
We're looking at saying no,
No.
zero.
Okay,
Zero.
I'm just saying.
If that's the wish.
Cover-
Zero's
cover your other.
Zero's good, right.
If that's the wish,
Yeah.
By Tuesday.
that's fine.
The two existing stores are grandfathered in.
But what I'm saying is I don't want this on there to say we should wish to do these and then we're not gonna do it. You gotta
Can
think
you say
of
we may,
how to do it.
we may desire at some point?
At the developer's expense.
Or
Yeah.
how.
Then I go back to that. The
Or
developer-
the city reserves the right to require or ask
We have.
at the developer's expense to conduct studies based on traffic.
I personally like to put the
Independent
language in that says the developer's got to pay for an independent
Exactly.
study.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It gets us off the
That's something
financial
we
hook.
leave us the out so that it doesn't look like uniformly with every vendor or every developer, we have to require it, and then someone could say, hey, you required them to do it, but you required us to do it, but not them.
Very
We
common.
reserve the
Ask
option.
them to pay for an independent study.
You guys keep getting stuck on the study part and ignoring the other
We haven't even made
parts.
it to it yet.
Skip the
still-
study crap and
Okay.
get to the other parts.
So
Like, are you going to look at the legislation regarding, architectural details? Are you going to look at the legislation regarding noise and litter? Are you gonna do these other things? And how are you gonna go about doing them?
we could do it. It's all zoning,
Which
right?
is all in zoning.
So, so forget studies first for a minute.
For a change of pace?
Where's that at?
And that paragraph. Where it says safety.
Oh, the noise.
Any increases in noise.
So you want to study the impact. The need for an extra turning lane, safety issues.
Why don't we take a good look at our current zoning code and see what is in there versus what is in that paragraph? And see
here's a
what
good
aligns and what
idea.
doesn't, and what we need to change.
So we just went over the architectural, thing, right? It's in our zoning code. They can determine.
Do you wanna make it more specific? Do you wanna have certain requirements?
Yeah.
Yes, no box stores.
Well, then put it in there.
Yeah.
Get into that process.
We
But
just
back to
did.
the architectural section.
It doesn't have to be there if you put it in no box stores.
Stop.
Stop,
You're
we're
just
talking about any
We're
store.
talking about any store. Do we
Any
want to
store.
have
Okay,
control
so you
What
want
I've been trying to say.
over weighing in on, according to this, we need to look at our zoning code and say, okay, when we're talking about architectural, what do we want to have the ability to weigh in on and say things about? What do we not want to weigh in and have the control or input on? Turning lanes, traffic studies, things like that. We need to look at the zoning code and see what's already written in there about those kinds of things. And be like, do we need to add more detail to that? You have to provide us more information about X, Y, and Z.
Thank you for understanding what I've been trying to say.
So we need to take that information, look at our zoning code and say, do we
Right.
need to tighten it up?
So we're outside of
Do
the
we need to
moratorium on
add
this
things?
part.
Do we
That's what
need
we're
to
talking.
not
It's
add
not,
things
it has
the current
nothing to do
zoning
with the
code?
moratorium.
Yes.
This would be a
Addition.
zoning, it's a total separate outside of the moratorium.
The whole meeting was supposed to be about,
And I would've
not
thought
about
that
the
was-
moratorium itself.
What's that?
I would have thought that was under the zoning.
Right, I don't, like, I was under the impression this was for the moratorium.
Yes, that's what I.
So
was-
I apologize, Paul, well,
Yes, I apologize.
Okay.
All of that portion.
because this was what I thought we were focusing,
Yeah, me
tonight.
too.
not outside of this. I thought we were reviewing the process for the moratorium. What's that?
We kind of need to do it all.
This is
Yes,
the
we do need.
start of that. This is the cause of it.
That's fine. I was just, my focus was strictly solely moratorium.
So we need to pick 1258 apart.
That's fine.
That's what I was
Correct.
gonna ask Michelle about. So what are those zoning, our current zoning for business? Is that
1258?
1258? Okay.
In person.
It's very short.
It should be the zoning committee. I would think, isn't it, Rob?
Why are we,
Is 1258 the only chapter we need to look
No,
at? Are there
there's-
other areas that we need to look at?
Because you have condo, you have garden condo, you have
Zoning.
something else.
Industrial office
Industrial,
building.
We don't have industrial anymore.
there's, oh my gosh, I can't think of the third one. Senior something, I can't remember the name, it's a.
We need to look
Garden
at
condominium.
zoning about
Garden type
Our
and elderly
type, too.
apartment district,
Yes,
1254.
yeah. I have them all. printed out,
garden
but when I
type
didn't
and
get home to get
elderly
my stuff.
apartment district.
I'm just confused.
Anything we
because
need
at the
under
beginning
business
you said
regulations.
sell them
Considering
Victoria,
we're
it's
talking
not-
about business area, I don't think we need to talk about the residential section, do we? At this point. We're talking about business.
As long as the flood overlay doesn't go into effect.
But here's the thing, we have to keep our ordinances consistent, so if we're looking at one about zoning, we have to look at everything about zoning. If we're gonna
Correct.
change it for one, we have to look at, because there are similar wording and sometimes exact wording amongst all those ordinances pertaining to the same thing. So we have to look at it. If we say, if we change the wording of this over here, we have to look at the other ones, because if it's the same wording in A, then we gotta change B, C, and D. We can't choose A and be like, yeah, we'll just leave B, C, and D alone. We have to look at all of them across the board.
And
Because I will tell you, when it talks about like, diversity of the styling or architectural, things like that, it is in several of those. So if we're changing architectural in one, we need to look at architectural in the other one. Not saying that we may or may not need it, but in all
So
fairness,
let's look
we
at
have
what
to
the
look at all
architectural
of it.
says. Let's see if it says it's what we agree.
Exactly.
If it's not, then we need to go look.
again, I think that's the zoning
Exactly.
committee's job.
So if your answer is to punt it to the zoning committee, then we will punt it to the zoning committee. I created this committee specifically to look at this stuff because, one, we have a member of the zoning committee who can't currently come to meetings as regularly as she would like because of work. We have another one who's going to be out for having surgery this summer.
Oh, sorry.
So that leaves one member of the committee left. So that means shit will get done. So I would like to see something get accomplished,
Okay,
rather than just dicking around with it and actually come up with a plan.
That sounded really good.
it did.
Did,
So
Yes.
let's pump the ball even further, put in the mayor's hand, and tell him we want a community development citizen advisory board commission, like it states on our city website. And let's start putting our minutes of our zoning, our PUDs and PUDs and zoning meetings of commission on the city webpage. We have not had anything since January 21 posted on our city webpage. Let's start there.
Great idea. Good idea.
Why don't we hire some people that have left so that they can actually get that stuff put on the website? Because we have lost a number of administration
that's why
members,
it's not being done. We don't have.
including the mayor's secretary. We just replaced the
So that's
zoning
2 months ago,
secretary.
that posted since 21. Try again.
How about if we get back to this?
Yeah,
We're an hour and a half into this.
Back
meeting,
to-
and haven't gotten
Well, I'm
anywhere.
confused because Kevin stated in the beginning that it was about the moratorium, and Rob didn't tell him it's about everything more than just the moratorium, because
I
that
was
probably would
under
have cut out a
understanding.
lot of stuff.
that this was moratorium.
I mean, he
issue.
sat there telling all of us it was about the moratorium, and now it's about more than just that.
Say again? We gotta restart. We do pledge again, or you guys want this?
Why don't we meet again to address?
Okay, so
in the-
I'm thinking now that we're clear, this is not about the moratorium. But still gonna have this proposed. Can we make a proposal since we're not discussing the moratorium? Mr. Lyons about adding an exception of the business for this group.
We're an official committee of council, so I don't see why not.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
if I might, keeping in mind with what council president wanted us to do tonight,
Mhm.
I would suggest that we look at taking that paragraph, we were talking about getting rid of.
Yes.
Where it says we wish to have a study, the impact of these items. Morph that into a section that can be put into all these different zoning sections if applicable. Only the council isn't going to do the study, they're not going to pay to do the study. They're
Let's
going to
look at
have,
the
it.
zoning
Let me
period
finish, please,
something.
please, let me finish. That the developer would pay to have these studies done and submitted to the planning and zoning. Would that, you think, solve some of this?
So that would be put into what he was
If you
more
read the
along.
zoning code, there is something about that in there, but I don't know it specifically,
Okay.
so we'll have to look at that too.
And that's fine, but this is a start. Would you agree? Sure. I'm trying to make the progress, and I agree it needs to be done.
And then we're gonna look at 125802.
Look at the regular zoning thing that talks about, so in the zoning code, it talks about their pre-plan, their development plan, and all that kind of stuff. So I would say look at that, because it gives you the information about like what they have to do, what they have to present, that kind of stuff. And see if we need to shore up when you're making your presentation to planning and zoning. Do you need to provide more information? Do you need to provide
Exactly.
this? Do you need to provide that? So we need to look at that.
Okay.
Because all that study information we're talking about
Should be in there.
should already be in there. We need to look and see, like, is there something in there about a presentation of that, those kinds of things.
It'd be under 1240 or 1242.
I can't remember the number exactly.
Because 1240 is general provisions and definitions.
Question in there because I'm short on understanding how the city works. Does your application give you categories where you expect them to tell you a bunch of these things so it's easier to map toward the ordinances?
I don't know. I've not
So
seen an
You might,
application.
it might be useful to know what that application says. Also, I do like the idea of mapping toward all those ordinances and understanding that. May not solve them all tonight, but I think you also might be spinning your wheels because we don't know what's on the applications. So that administrative procedures related to that, useful, you know.
Okay, so that's just the architectural detail.
Should we begin with the end in mind? What is the goals we want to achieve and map them out? And then, once we know those goals, let's figure out how to implement them into whatever ordinance changes or direction we need to take. So if we can begin with, what are the ultimate goals we want to achieve? You know, what's 10,000 foot number? What would be ideal?
Well, I mean, we've already determined we don't want buildings to look alike. We want aesthetically pleasing.
Aesthetically pleasing and diversity in our
And it's stated in our codes already
needs to
in
be-
more than
That's
one
what we
spot.
need to check.
So right now, in the business section, I did look at the residential, senior living garden, all that business, so this is 125805 is yard regulations, it's under business again.
Correct.
Under D, point number 5, just says monotony of design shall be avoided, variation of detail, form, and sighting shall be used to provide visual interest. That's all.
Correct.
the
It's already there.
only Statement in the entire business section that pertains at all to the design of the building. There's other things about fence heights and pastures and
And it's vague.
pedestrian walkways, and all, it's very
And it's
vague.
very vague and it's
So-
able to be interpreted however
Okay,
you want.
monotony just means it doesn't look like every single thing else on the block, and variation of detail, form, and sighting to provide visual interest. By whose standards, what visual interest, do you want it to look like, you
The
know,
architectural.
downtown
firm that we will
Cleveland, or do you want to
consult
look like
consult.
Geneva, like, you know, I mean, there's. nothing
If I can
specific.
just add a word to that, because I think when, it sounds to me like everything needs to be completely different. And I think the word unified needs to be in there as well, with optional architectural details. Because the uniformity is what gives something a pleasing look. We just don't want identical, and we want architectural details that are
Aesthetically pleasing.
diversified and aesthetically pleasing with a unified
Or coordinating.
yeah.
A theme, you'll have a theme,
Cohesive
and
plan.
maybe nautical as a theme. So it can be diversified as long as it all feels back to the theme that we want.
I don't know what other cities do if they really nail down to like roof styles and, you know, siding styles and do they, how far down can we?
I think Mentor does. Because I've seen it in some of their stuff where, in the newspaper, where the business is proposed to open up on a certain area of Mentor Avenue, and they require a certain look to the building, complete with the roof, the siding, if they're gonna use brick, what kind of
Color
brick?
schemes.
Yes,
Well, can you be as specific as what he said, nautical? Can we just say we want to lean towards a nautical theme?
Consistent with our lakefront location.
Well, if you have a vision, if we had a vision in there, you could have some verbiage, not too much, a few sentences about the theme for the city. Now, we've already got a few setbacks. We've got a bunch of stores we wish weren't here and so on. We can't change that immediately. But certainly, we've got enough smart people and visionary people to say, well, moving forward, what is the theme for Mentor on the Lake? Certainly something about on the lake ought to come into play.
All right. So we're gonna review 1258.05. This is done before we're gonna have to do before the next meeting. We also are assigned to do the sign regulation. That is.
It is something.
Bless you.
I have it written down here. Signs. 1284.04. 4.04, our wishes and stuff. I can see what the signs is written, so let's go over that. What are the others? The what?
In general.
Just
the general zoning.
general zoning.
See what they have to put on the app, see what's in there about the, what has to be provided as part of the zoning process. What's in there? I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Got the 1256.12.
1256.
12. That's approval of site development.
1256 is condominium district.
It's under the zoning code. About
General.
124202 is zoning permit.
there's a part that talks about like the application process. and everything like that.
Zoning application.
I'll have to look at Mr. Lyons. He referenced that.
Maybe we should just figure that deal out. Let some restaurants come in.
I think we're now more along the course of what you wanted. Correct. In general. The ordinances that you have to do besides the convention.
Rather see the park.
Maybe I didn't get that one from Mr. Lyons.
So it would probably be on the 1242. all those things.
I just. went 1242.
I don't think it's right to lend us money. They would go to
So
Elaine and
1258.
say, hey, let's buy the property and do it. And that's the only problem. Nobody has the money.
1242 what?
1242.
In general.
I would write about this work.
Committee members, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time,
Appreciate your-
everybody.
appreciate your work.
Thank you for coming in.
Because it
Appreciate
talks. My kids are going to go for plan review, so it's all that.
We live in
Mhm.
Milwaukee. They're gonna be-
Yeah, 1242. Dot.
Oh, I'm not.
1242.025 is what Jim Lyons quoted. He gives them about this more.
Development plan review.
Yes.
All right. I think we have a lot to review. So we'll make an amendment after we look at these for their proposed changes.
Did I miss anything? I hit down 1240, 1284.04, 1258.05, 1242.025.
1258.
Oh,
what?
sorry.
1258.05.
05. Yeah.
1284.04,
Yeah.
1242.025. Did I miss anything?
Look at 1258.022.
There's gonna be at least those. We may find more.
Well, this is where we're gonna start, and if we find something there, and then we go somewhere else.
No 0.25 is the development plan.
Mhm.
How long you guys think?
We should come back to it.
Yeah,
I can't meet on the 13th. Postpone that couple quick council.
okay.
And we postponed them because
We're just gonna discuss amongst ourselves and then we'll just set it at the council.
we want to do it the 6th, right after the planning. Zones.
Not really. The 6th or 7th is pretty busy.
Can't schedule until after the council meeting.
Yeah.
So that would be after the 14th.
I would say that. That's a.
20th looks great. It's June 20th.
We have the 13th as ordinance.
Yeah.
It can't be until after 14th. I would say 20th. Some of it.
Or would you rather do the 15th, 16th, or 16th? Right after council.
So I'm looking at the 20th or the second.
I say
Let's
20th.
do the 20th.
20. 7 p.m.
You're up.
June 20th.
Okay.
7th. Unless you guys want to start.
Well, it's,
No, right, we can
It's a
tell.
holiday for.
Okay, so.
oh, it is a holiday.
All right, we are going to, well, we're gonna do our research on these ordinances that we're going to review. And then, we're gonna meet again. It's not set, but it will be the 20th. 7 p.m.
Yeah, June 20th.
June 20th. This is just going over our ordinances. Any questions before we go?
Just one.
Go.
As far as the moratorium that we're speaking about,
Yeah, well,
so,
that we were speaking about, but not speaking about.
right.
Yeah.
The main focus, but then not.
Yeah,
So moving forward, all of these changes that or additions that you're putting in as far as requirements for aesthetics and signage and parking, and
Mhm.
is that going to apply to the Dollar General, or is that too late?
so it,
That's a good.
to be honest, if they're moving as fast as they are, can I tell you it will be in place before them? No, I can't. Because we've got to do our research on this, then we would have to do legislation and then present it. Could they be done and in before then? Sure. I'm not gonna say yes or no.
So can we fast track this to make sure? We need to get something.
I mean, we're doing our-
Fighting.
Sure. There, planning and zoning does have the ability, with what we read, it is kind of vague, but they still have some ability. I can't say we will have this done in, I don't know, maybe we will.
I wish you could. And if there's a way that any of our community energy can help you, I believe that if we will try everything you, I'm sure you see, we have some energy, we have a lot of talent. But backing you up is a lot of talent. You're not alone.
What could we do to help you guys make the process better? for you? Anything we can do to help? I will contact some architects. I will get their opinions.
Our-
If something like
yeah.
that would be
Anything
helpful.
to help.
Yes.
Yes.
You guys along would be, I think there's a lot of people who
Talk
talk
to
about.
Dave.
We don't get this.
And we got to see if we can get them, and I'm hoping they're amenable to something, design. I don't know how far we can go, but we can at least try. And I would like to have,
I mean, you're talking-
there's some ideas on these pictures, a little
Yes.
more
No, I-
nautical design, just to see what they say.
Just point it to the light.
What if the
Monday.
library, somebody incorporate something that.
But you know what, and here's the thing, like,
That's why I want
I've
that
been looking at
PDA
vendors
part.
ordinances and things like that, and they have pictures in their ordinances, like things that they want it to look like. So, is this something where we need to look at, okay, let's incorporate some pictures into our ordinance
yeah,
and give them an
I know.
example of what we're looking for. It doesn't have to just be words on a page.
Well, I think that's why they can't.
Yes.
We can
That's a
add
good idea.
pictures, we
That
can
is a
add
good
stuff
idea.
like that.
What'd you say?
Like, other cities do
Well,
that.
what if
This
you
is-
choose one
This is
city?
what we want to see, something
Well, I would
similar to
definitely
this,
want
or
to.
here's a guide or something.
Then-
So,
then-
do
then I'll-
we
I'll
want to
look at
put
the
pictures in there?
You know, we'll have her
What
do
pictures do
Thursday.
we want to put in
Okay.
there? We
Then
we
have
have
Dave do
lots
it.
of
All right.
options
Did you look at those, Michelle?
to get that point
Yeah.
across. Yes.
Good idea, Michelle.
Here's an idea,
Yes.
like, what do you guys, just as some input, or input, city-wise, what cities do you like to see? Like, what do you aesthetically, you go drive it through? Just give me some,
Hudson, Brooks.
just, okay, Hudson,
Chagrin.
Willoughby's downtown.
Willoughby.
I know those are older. so
No, that's
kind of
fine.
a tough.
So what we're gonna do is
That's
we're gonna
not
take
really
your,
the best.
your suggestions, and we're gonna compare our ordinances, and we're each gonna take a city here and look at their ordinances and see how they're written.
Great idea.
Then we're gonna come together, that's what Paul and I were just talking about, and
Chagrin
said, let's,
Falls.
so we're gonna do Menor, obviously, there are.
Yeah.
Don't look at
Well,
that.
we're-
Don't
well,
look at
They
that.
were
We're
just
looking
talking
at this.
about 44, how they just threw all that on.
We're looking at their
That's
ordinances,
So Concord, yeah.
Concord.
your ordinances, not the specific city.
Right, ordinances.
How did they write them?
What did they write?
What do they do to make it appear the way they do,
Right.
so aesthetically?
Okay, so we have Hudson,
Brecksville.
Willoughby.
There are other. Don't give them too many.
Yeah, we can only do 4.
They don't-
No, they approved four.
Okay, let's go with the lakefront city. What do you,
You might think about Vermillion
Vermillion?
Yeah.
is a good one.
Yeah, it is.
Huron, Lorraine.
I mean, one more.
Well, you can do Ashtabula because it's close. I mean,
Ashtabula is not.
You know,
When's the last time you went to Ashtabula? I grew up there, trust me.
They
You wanna
have
run down
tried.
with it?
Yes, but
No,
If you look at Akron, it's
I will push back on your negatives and say, if you look at their ordinances, you may find we should not do that.
right.
Okay, yeah, I can
That's
agree
true.
on that.
That's
Yeah.
Avon Lake.
I can agree on that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, what,
I don't know anything about it, I don't really know anything.
so I've got
about it.
Hudson, Willoughby, Vermillion.
Chagrin
Chagrin Falls. Let's just-
What about Concord, that 44
What about
plaza
it?
down there?
That's just a shopping
Yes,
center.
that's just
Yeah, but I mean, at least it's
Nah.
a look better.
It is.
I'm
He's
looking
got.
for it.
It is.
You know, when you're talking about Avon, Avon is
Somebody
more like
have
us than is Lorraine
Want
and
me to do
Vermillion. They're
But
more
it is-
residential.
Must be Avon Lake.
You need to be comparable cities, because there's only so much a city this size can
Dave,
draw.
you're gonna do Chagrin Falls. I'm doing Vermillion.
Rob, moratorium off the table for now or.
It's
like a reading for the next meeting, so next week.
All of it.
Saturday, and there'll be another vote. Before the end of the
10
next
years ago it is.
Second Tuesday. Oh, right.
Look back 10 years.
And so there
No,
will
no.
be another vote and that.
And so we're gonna look at like appearances.
It's not about the emergency.
What other things we wanna
We
look
can't
at?
have another
I'm
emergency.
just gonna look at the zoning ordinance and
All
so
right.
what,
In the
Okay.
meantime, they're already.
So
The
we're gonna-
motion last time was to suspend the rules.
Right.
That's it. So that would allow us to vote on it that night.
Right.
Anyway, now it's going to second reading. The emergency part
You got
is a
yours?
totally separate thing. Emergency means it
You
goes
said
into
you read
effect as soon as it's
Yeah,
signed
do you
by
know
the
what you're
mayor.
doing now?
You want me to
Yeah, the
go
mayor
and
still
look
has
at
30 days
Their
to sign
ordinances,
these
how
if we
they're
pass it.
written.
Right.
So,
Comparative to ours, like, do they go in specific detail of how their architectural design?
Like you sign it, you can put it in a drawer, and we'll never know.
he could veto it. He's vetoed stuff before.
yeah, you did.
And it's a 5
Based on
vote
what?
to override.
That would be his
All right, let's
decision.
finish this meeting. Yeah, let's go. All right, so we're gonna do our homework. Like I said, we're gonna look at other cities' ordinances, kind of
Thank
see,
you.
pull together.
And we'll do our homework and look for.
All right.
For you guys, like,
Yeah.
races and stuff like that.
Thank you, folks, for your time. 8:50, adjourned. That was absolutely quick.
I still say, oh, on the ordinance, they got to do something about it. The elderly, the whole city is designed, anybody can.
The whole city is a certain section of the city.
Look at the map.
I did. It's a dark plot. You gotta look at it carefully.
Oh,
It's
really?
not clear as a
Oh, good, I don't want the whole city.
What's your point?
I just didn't want that particular lot back there where Dollar General's gonna be placing it to be that.
Well, those can only be elderly apartments.
I'm sorry it took us so long to.
Speak what you wanted. Could have just steered us the right way.
I did from the beginning about the whereas part.
Well, obviously.
No, when I was still. Now, great. So I still, because we got this proposed lines that we add the.
That's fine.
There's nothing wrong with it. Yep. So I'll contact lines, hopefully before Monday. Okay. Sir?
You could email it tonight.
All right, I haven't had dinner, so. I'll see you later, guys.
Very upset and I took it all out. Sorry.
Hey, Chris.
This whole thing is- Well, it's a huge learning curve. What I heard
I'm hungry.
lately is I think the real
Really?
problem. we have
You
here
kept me way past my bedtime.
Still your fault. What's really, the
You
thing
didn't
is,
stop
all
when
the
he said this was Dr.
That's what we
Gloria.
said.
You're just like, let go.
somehow.
I told him
You
multiple
guys-
times that it wasn't just about the moratorium. That what part of it was about. Of the
Duh.
moratorium proposal.
What's, I mean,
Should've
the
left
mayor
more
sat
time.
there.
But you
how
just
many
kept
meetings
letting
while
everything
people
run
asked
rampant.
us
So I
questions.
was
I
like,
know.
He
whatever.
just sat there, said
Just because you don't listen doesn't mean I'm gonna
So
like.
all was on the same page.